Check out these performances from the multi-track master of the Beatles, Strawberry Fields Forever. Paul McCartney's achingly sad mellotron flutes. The groovy triplet swing of Ringo Starr's drums. George Harrison's Indian scale arpeggios. And John Lennon's speed-altered vocals.
Living is easy with eyes closed.
Still gives me chills. Here's the thing. Strawberry Fields came out when I was 5 years old. Didn't matter that I was so young. The whole experience of this record just grabbed me, never really let go. I mean, here I am more than 50 years later. Strawberry Fields still ranks in my top 5 songs, recordings, and arrangements of all time. Of course, Strawberry Fields has been endlessly picked apart and analyzed and praised by music critics and listeners. This song is enshrined in the Grammy Hall of Fame. It's one of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's 500 songs that shaped rock and roll. So it probably seems like there's nothing left to say. But I haven't had my say yet, so stick with me. Let's venture back into John Lennon's nostalgic, otherworldly masterpiece. This is the song he called his finest work with the Beatles. Because you and I, we're going to blow up the song.
Let me take you down.
Welcome back to the channel and another song blow up. In this series, I take great songs and recordings and blow away the veneer of the final mix. So we hear individual tracks, which are the building blocks, so you can hear how the music got arranged, performed, and recorded. Now, I really appreciate it when you guys tell me you love these blow-ups and you're surprised they don't have more views. That's why I need your help to spread the word. So please, take a sec to like the video, subscribe and hit the bell if you haven't before. Most of all, leave a comment to tell everyone what these songs mean to you. I know it means a lot to the algorithm. All right, Strawberry Fields Forever has some notable distinctions in the Beatles' history. It was the fall of '66, the first time they re-entered the recording studio since recording Revolver 5 months earlier. It was also the first thing they did together after their final live tour, which they'd already announced was going to be their last. Keep in mind, fans were used to a near constant stream of new music from the Beatles, literally 2, sometimes 3 albums a year. So a few months of downtime had fans and the press a little spooked. There were actually rumors the Beatles might split up. So when they were seen re-entering EMI Studios to record new music, it was actually front page news in the UK. Strawberry Fields was actually the start of what would eventually become the Sgt. Pepper sessions. And both Strawberry Fields and McCartney's nostalgic sister song, Penny Lane, were originally intended to be on the next Beatles album. But their record label EMI and the corporate powers just could not wait, so both of these legendary songs got released as a double A-side single in February of '67. Now, the Brits were so thrifty and value conscious, they had a custom of not including songs from the Beatles' singles on their LPs. So in England, Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane were singles only. They didn't become album cuts until the Beatles' 1967-70 compilation album, which was released in '73. So it's pretty ironic that a single with 2 such influential songs marked the end of 4 straight years of #1 singles for the Beatles, because this double A-side peaked at a disappointing #2 on the record retailer chart. Meanwhile, in the US, there was some head scratching about the new sound and the avant-garde qualities of Strawberry Fields. Despite the fact that I bought and loved the single, it actually stalled at #8 here in the States. Now, the next Christmas, 1967, the full-length Magical Mystery Tour album came out here, which added 5 songs to the UK's EP version. Now, apparently, the Beatles themselves didn't like Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane showing up on our Magical Mystery Tour album, but as a kid, I loved that they were there. For me, the whole album felt like the perfect extra psychedelic follow-up to Sgt. Pepper's. Now, this was right at the time my dad decided to invest in a hi-fi stereo, so I was able to listen to Magical Mystery Tour in headphones and just get lost in it. I'm actually convinced this song has everything to do with why I became a musician and why I'm sharing my enthusiasm with you right now. All right, time to blow up Strawberry Fields Forever. You probably know the song pays homage to a scene from John Lennon's childhood. There was a Salvation Army children's home in Woolton, the Liverpool suburb where John grew up, and he often used to walk by the gate and the twin signs that said Strawberry Field. Side note, the original Strawberry Field home bore a striking resemblance to the Coda in New York City, where John, Yoko, and their son Sean lived during John's final years. Now, if you watch this channel, you know that John Lennon is a strong contender for my favorite songwriter. And one major reason is that his songs sounded so different from everyone else's, like they really came from another world. You know, odd chord progressions, meandering melodies, poetically abstract lyrics. But for me, no matter how weird, somehow they also sounded right. And they made musical sense, at least to my ear. So this whole song, music and lyrics, feels like a total stream of consciousness. It's interesting that John's first batch of lyrics didn't mention Strawberry Fields. In fact, the working title was It's Not Too Bad. Not quite the same magic. He originally wrote, Let Me Take You Back.
Let me take you back, 'cause I'm going to.
But soon changed it to Let Me Take You Down. So take you back, maybe a little more expected. Let me take you back in time. But let me take you down. That's a trip down memory lane, but it's also going down below the surface, into his psyche. So why did he change the singular Strawberry Field to Strawberry Fields? It's a little harder to say and sing, but I actually think it's because he's inviting us down to all the strawberry fields of his youth, right? He's sharing more than one memory. So Lennon had such a confessional way of writing. He was sort of a warts and all kind of a guy. I did a whole video about this in my series called Write a Song Right Now, about how we can use John's honesty to inspire our own lyric writing. You can check that out here. So these handwritten lyrics are a glimpse into his editing process. He's really trying to get it right, express exactly what he feels. There's no one on my wavelength. I mean, it's either too high or low. Eventually that becomes no one I think is in my tree. I mean, it must be high or low. And then he says, that is, you can't, tune in, but it's all right. That is, I think it's not too bad. So this was the first time I ever heard mental and emotional hesitation in the words of a song. Handwritten version says, I always know, sometimes think it's hard, but I know when it's a beam, or maybe bean. And that became, always know, sometimes think it's me, but I know when it's a dream. I think I know, yes, but it's all wrong. That is, I think I disagree. I mean, this is like the early prototype for the lyrics of Your Song by Bernie Taupin, right? Anyway, the thing is what I really mean. So John Lennon kind of gave other writers permission to write that way. Lennon himself actually called this song psychoanalysis set to music. So John sketched out the basics of the song in September of '66. He was on set in Spain shooting the film How I Won the War. And the other Beatles weren't around, and John was feeling kind of adrift and alone. And I think you can really feel that in the sadness of the words and the melody.
Strawberry field. Nothing is real.
So at the end of November, he brought this developing song into EMI Studios, which would later be renamed Abbey Road. And he was really happy to be back with his mates, and in this familiar recording studio. And I guess everyone was in a good space and ready to kind of venture where the music might take them. And the production process of Strawberry Fields really reflects that, because it turned into the most sophisticated, complicated, and really rule-breaking record the Beatles had tackled up to that point. They spent a whopping 45 hours of studio time. I mean, that's more than a full work week, but it was spread out over 5 weeks. They just kept coming back to it as it evolved. So I have stems taken from the final master, and I've loaded them into Logic Pro. They look like stereo tracks, but they're actually mono, so I've panned them to where they sit in the final mix. This is a visual way to see the structure of the final arrangement. And one thing that jumped out at me is that I always think of the Beatles as a band, right? I expect each player to have one or more tracks of them just playing all the way through the song, because that's true of most Beatles songs, but not true with this original mix of Strawberry Fields. Now, I often make the case for the Beatles' producer and arranger George Martin to be considered the fifth Beatle. And given his massive role in this song, case closed. Because at the second chorus, the orchestra part that Martin arranged and conducted takes over for all the standard rock band instruments, except the drums. So the orchestra becomes the band all the way to the coda. You can see where it happens right here. John keeps singing, Ringo keeps playing, but other than that, we switch from the rock band instruments to the orchestra. Check out the transition without the vocals. Okay, music scholars love to pick apart Strawberry Fields, and it's like comedy to see how they explain it in very theoretical and intellectual terms. For example, Dominic Pedler describes Lennon's non-diatonic chords and secondary dominance combining with chromatic melodic tension intensified through outrageous harmonization and root movement. Sure, Dominic, but here's the thing. John didn't know music theory. He and Paul were the epitome of musicians and songwriters who just trusted their ears and emotions to write their unique and memorable songs. John wrote Strawberry Fields on acoustic guitar in the key of C. And when you play it this way, you realize the whole thing is just common major and minor chords. I mean, the chorus has 4 chords: C, G minor, A7, and F.
Let me take you down, 'cause I'm going to strawberry fields. Nothing is real, and nothing to get hung about. Strawberry fields forever.
Pretty simple, actually. I mean, those are basic common chords. They're just strung together in a unique way. And of course, John adds these modal moments in the melody that do surprise most ears. This is one of his favorite tricks, right? The one I just love is the G minor, strawberry fields, and then the A7. Nothing is real. That half step is Rhythmically, he also drops a few beats during the chorus. The way I feel the rhythm, it's straight 4/4 until a bar of 2 beats on Nothing 2 and a bar of 3 beats on Strawberry Fields. It's like this. Nothing is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. There you go. Each verse has 6 chords. A little more complicated, but they're all still chords we learned in the first Mel Bay book, right? G, B minor, D minor, A minor, F, F, G, C, A minor, F, G, F, C. So instead of waxing theoretical, I just admire how John could use such basic building blocks to create what George Martin described as a complete tone poem like a modern Debussy. That ability is why John is such an incredible songwriter. I mean, this song uses just 8 total chords to create this dreamy, meandering journey into the past, and it always feels fresh, at least to my ears. Okay, back to the master tracks. The song starts with Paul's haunting mellotron riff. It's using the 3 flutes setting. But you can see in the final mix, he only plays up to the start of the second chorus, and that's it. Here's the second time he plays the intro. Now this reduction track is bass guitar, played by Paul, the finger-picked electric guitar, played by George, and a pulsing mellotron part, also played by George.
Nothing is real.
It's also out at the second chorus. That's right where an editing splice happens and the orchestra takes over. Now, the reason this shift to the orchestra works is, number one, George Martin was a brilliant, innovative orchestral arranger. I mean, in this case, he had the radical idea to just use cellos, or celli if we're being technical, and a brass section. So check out these chunks of his arrangement. These are from a rare bootleg album, so you're going to hear him playing as originally recorded at a faster speed and about a half step higher. It's in the key of C. I love the bite and aggressiveness of the cellos. brass. Almost sounds like a traditional brass band. The brass band is how Martin honored another memory from John's childhood. There was an annual garden party. It was held at a park right near the Strawberry Field home, and the Salvation Army Brass Band played. John's Aunt Mimi said he always wanted to be on time to hear the band. So another reason George Martin's orchestra works as a substitute rock band is this rhythm track. It's driving, groovy, swinging drums played by Ringo. And then later, a bunch of other drums and percussion instruments. They're played by the whole band and some of the Beatles' usual entourage, guys like Mal Evans and Neil Aspinall. I think the percussion track just glues the whole thing together. It gets so intense and driving that we never really miss the guitar and bass. One more thing that keeps this feeling like a rock tune happens near the end. It's just 2 short phrases of lead guitar played by Paul. Here's the first. And the second with a nice trill. Okay, then the song seems to end, but of course it's a false fade because it leads to that weird and wonderful coda. You know, the drums march back in and these mangled flutes repeat their wacky phrase. As a kid, I always pictured the Beatles marching around playing those flutes. It's actually a mellotron flute phrase looping and playing in reverse. And of course, John's big clue saying, "I buried Paul." Just kidding, it's cranberry sauce. The final 1967 mix is a jigsaw puzzle of pieces from various takes and reduction mixes. Some of them are radically different from each other. So keep in mind, the Beatles were working with 4-track tape machines. So more than once during the recording process, they would fill 4 tracks of a tape and then reduce or bounce them over to a single track on another 4-track machine. And that would give them 3 open tracks to overdub new parts and sounds. Now, if you're a geek like me and you want to know how everything evolved and came together, the best source is a book by Mark Lewison called The Complete Beatles Recording Sessions. It's actually an amazing reference for anyone who's passionate about recording. It's actually under $20. So I put a link in the description. Now, if you haven't heard this bit of lore, you'll love it. After 26 takes, some complete, some sections, and some reduction mixes of previous takes, John tells George Martin that he likes the beginning of the song from the original lighter version, specifically take 7, but that he likes the end of the song from the more intense version with the orchestra. So he wants to combine take 7 and 26. And Martin has to give him the bad news that take 26 with the orchestra is at a faster tempo and a half step higher than take 7. And Lennon just looks at him and says, "You can fix it, George." And against all odds, he did fix it. George Martin and EMI engineer Geoff Emerick used 2 tape machines, both with Verispeed, and they matched the 2 takes as closely as possible in pitch and tempo. Now, if you ever try to play along, you're going to find out the final mix is in a non-standard key. It's a little lower than B flat. And that's because it was spliced together from 2 different takes in different keys, both recorded at different speeds. And again, right here is where the splice happens and the orchestra takes over. You can see it's pretty early in the song. It's at about the 1-minute mark. So the final arrangement has a total of 4 choruses and 3 verses. The vocals on the first chorus and verse sound pretty normal. They actually had sped up the tape while recording John's original vocals, so when they played at standard speed, they'd actually sound a bit slow and slurred. So when they sped up that take for the final edit, it sounded a little less slow. Now then, on the other 3 choruses and 2 verses, the ones from take 26, John's voice is slowed down more obviously, and that gives it more of a marbles in the mouth or, swimming underwater kind of feel.
No one I think is in my tree. I mean, it must be high or low. That is, you can't, tune in, but it's all right. That is, I think it's not too bad.
I think that sluggish vocal timbre really adds to the kind of drunken dreaminess of the tune. Now, speaking of dreamy, what's the exotic instrument that plays those mystical descending arpeggios before the second and third verse? That's George Harrison playing a zither-like instrument called a swarmandal, or Indian harp. It's one of his coolest contributions. Now, George Martin actually arranged the cello part to enhance that East Indian feel. And that's something he did again brilliantly on George's song Within You Without You from Sgt. Pepper's. For years, all the early takes and trial and error versions of Strawberry Fields sat in the vaults at EMI. And then in the mid-90s, which was quite a while after Lennon's assassination, the remaining Beatles and George Martin opened up the vaults and they compiled a bunch of outtakes and rarities on a 3-part Beatles anthology series. Disc 2 of Anthology 2 has 3 Strawberry Fields tracks. There's a Lennon guitar vocal demo, a remix of Take 1 with backing harmonies, and then the complete remixed version of Take 7. So check that out if you want to hear the whole song played only by the Beatles, no orchestra. It's still great, but less intense, and it's really nowhere near the psychedelic journey that's been the fuel for my imagination all these years. So the outtakes on Anthology 2 are cool, but for rabid fans like me, there's something even better. An unofficial bootleg album, pirated from the original multi-track masters, and it traces the whole writing and recording process. So in the late 80s, I was lucky enough to snag this bootleg series called The Beatles Back-Track, which I still own. For legal reasons, Back-Track was released in South Korea, and it actually included 10 tracks devoted only to the recording process of Strawberry Fields. So this was my candy store, guys. There were 4 of John's home demos. There were all the early unreleased EMI versions, takes 1 through 5, and then take 7, which is a stereo reduction mix of take 6. So here's an example.
Strawberry fields forever.
Back-Track also had both the raw cello and brass backing track in the key of C, plus it had the regular speed take 26. That's the take that got slowed down to become the last 2/3 of the final mix. So if we combine take 7 and take 26 from Back-Track and match the speeds, we have the 2 actual building blocks of the final 1967 mix. Like I said, I have those unreleased bootlegs. They're not for sale because that wouldn't be kosher, but I do share them, plus other musical goodies, with my Patreon supporters. So if you want to go all the way down to Strawberry Fields, become a patron of the channel and they're yours. Now, it's tempting to talk about the influence of Strawberry Fields and Lennon's other psychedelic tunes of that period, because they really were the advent of psychedelic pop and rock. Definitely opened the doors for bands like Pink Floyd, The Move, the whole Mellotron era of the Moody Blues, and lots of others. Or we could talk about how the promo film clips for Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane helped establish the whole art and film vocabulary of the music video. But I think those are topics for another video. All right, there's your long trip down Penny Lane to Strawberry Fields. I hope you learned something, maybe got a few chills like me, and really enjoyed this glimpse into the genius musical minds of John Lennon, the Beatles, George Martin, and Geoff Emerick. So what does Strawberry Fields mean to you? Please remember to leave a comment and share this video with any Lennon and Beatles fans you know. I want to thank you for being here to blow up the song. These videos really are a labor of love and respect, so if you want to blow up more, please support the channel in any way you can. I do post all my videos on guitardiscoveries.com, and my Patreon link is over there, so check that out and get your fill of guitar, vocal, and recording inspiration. See you next time.